I am, yes. Hold on, Professor, I was in a second. Yes, calling right away.
It says waiting, so it's not responding.
Hey.
It's waiting for the website.
we have 6 of us, and then 7 being Pelosi's official. Okay. So go ahead and ping your spot. Yeah, unless other colleagues don't show up. Same with Graham. So just go ahead and take him for now. And then
I'll start here.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, good.
if someone comes in, yeah, and they're in their first rotation technically, but right now everyone's here, so go for it. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
I know Anna's gonna be here. She's, so you know that too.
Yeah, people are around for sure. It's just a matter of.
All right, so from where we go this way, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that would be the idea, yeah.
Okay.
And then, ideally this person here would then hit this back area. And up the
Riser.
down, whichever one is.
Okay. Okay.
And you've seen it a couple times now too, so it's pretty flexible.
Okay, and the other thing is Raven Room,
1
right?
o'clock, yes.
What's that?
I said 1 o'clock-ish, Rayburn? Hey.
You're
Are you writers today by chance? Okay. So right now, we would have you in technically the second wave, but no one is here yet. All your colleagues haven't filled all the spots yet. So we'll go ahead and put you
So
in
if
first.
someone from first wave will come,
Okay, exactly, exactly. So go ahead and take one of the positions. So you're, I need to tell you one more thing. In addition to our normal 5 that are in here, we also have one in the corner with a mark on the floor as well. And then we have one that can be on the riser.
no,
I keep that in mind.
created that spot last week. I
So
did
keep
a nice
that in
picture
mind.
from that corner.
Okay, so when you're rotating for these positions, those are additionals, okay? Thank you. Gavin here with maybe some anthology, the same way. I see you at the rate, so I feel like this will go this minute. I don't want to cause too much of a kerfuffle right at the last minute.
She's never late.
So did you kind of get the gist of what we're
So
doing?
one spot is
We have the regular 5 that you've already seen.
6 is there and 7 is there, effectively, and then those 6 can do it.
As long as you're not.
You say you're mini? Right, no problem.
I did drive it today.
Oh, did you?
We're gonna do the group.
No problems?
No, it actually seems fine.
If
Yeah,
the
it's
colleagues
weird.
come here.
So I've been looking, but I haven't found what I wanted yet. But I haven't had time to go and.
I'll start on the.
Excellent. I want to get a Kia Niro hybrid. It's a
Okay.
hybrid SUV.
Okay. Huh. I think those are pretty big cars.
It gets like great gas mileage, 50 miles to the gallon.
Yeah, yeah. They're also just like really reliable.
So I just, as soon as they get over 100,000, they make me nervous. Then I have to deal with mechanics.
You want to sell your mini?
Yes.
Oh, no.
No.
Look, any German car over 100,000 miles is problematic.
I'll vouch for that.
Any those old Ford Crown Vics, those could
Last
go
forever.
moon and back.
Because they're under stress, those engines.
Yeah,
Right.
right. But anything German.
See, the problem is it's not that they have to have things changed, or fixed. It's that I have to deal with a mechanic, and a mechanic says, hey, this needs to be done, and through my lifetime, I've experienced them.
What kind of
they're
car
like,
do you have?
Huh?
What kind of car do you have?
A Mini Cooper.
Oh, that's the VFW underneath.
Right.
Exactly.
But the thing is,
Which is the problem.
that
It's good for the first 50 or 100,000 miles, as long as you get the right.
mechanics see a woman and they're like, oh, we're gonna charge her double.
I leased the.
Yeah, that does happen.
Unfortunately.
It totally does. I remember when I was my first car.
That's a real thing.
I remember
Hey.
I had a Ford, and I went into Midas, and they're like, oh, you have to have the rotors changed, the brakes changed, the calipers changed, the whole bit. I'm like, okay. So then I learned after that experience that No, back in the day, you could actually turn the rotors to flatten them out, because you're like, see, they're all wobbly, you know. So then when I had my Toyota, they're like, oh, you need new calipers, rotors. I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, yes, you do.
Part of it's Midas.
And, well, so what I learned with the Toyota, though, is that
Some people told me Midas stories like that.
part of it, what I learned about Toyota is that in order to make their vehicles cheaper and more fuel efficient, they didn't actually have the wear and tear built onto them. So that when they did say you need new rotors, I actually did, because they didn't put enough steel in them to where you could actually turn them. So then I'm like, okay, fine. So every time I learn something, but it's just, I'm tired of having to learn something.
Yeah.
Just be frickin' honest.
Good morning.
Mike.
Mr. Reynolds.
One day I can hopefully afford.
You can afford the face mask.
I can afford a face mask, I can't afford the bike. Laura and Heidi Spradler, poultry, the monster is more than
These masks,
Yes.
right?
Mine, I think I have a good knockoff mask. They smell really weird, and whenever I wear the like
But yeah,
disposable
which y'all
ones,
have bigger?
I can breathe a lot better. But I always
What
end up
size under the door?
Yeah, it's because
The ear.
the ear, yeah.
Those are more.
That's what healthcare
Mine's
workers,
inflict them.
people
Yeah.
need.
Yeah, the doctors, they have this thing where
You
they,
can't outdrive it. I mean, it's not that you can't.
yeah, because if you get, if you run this thing behind your ear,
It's something you can't do what it could do, but
Yeah.
something to limit what
I
it
don't know,
can do
but
is no legal
behind your
limit.
ear,
Yeah.
it's so it's,
And then Connie,
It's much better if you just do that. But you can't go around like that.
right, you need something, rubber band or something.
Showed up, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so we have 7 positions
Exactly,
now.
that's where I live, I live
So we
in
have this one
California.
taken, 2,
I just
Oh, sure.
It was country
and
area.
we have down in front of TV,
Yeah.
this is taken as well. So we have one in the corner, and then we have the ability to have one on the riser in the back. So we'll go with this 7 to start.
Yeah,
At
and
this
also,
point,
because
you should be
we end up
expected to
getting
start
like
momentarily.
marks.
So, hi. Okay, so now that we have,
Well, even a cruiser, I used to have a.
how are you?
Good.
I am rotors, that's right.
PPE.
And that's just like
We don't get those
Technically,
marks
I'm-
permanently in our shoulders and we have cameras and back problems.
Economical.
The following.
Yeah.
Do I get to pick?
There's a bit of that.
You know what?
You will cover
Mr. Ernst.
Hey there.
You're
It helps, I'm probably not staying too long.
Are you advocating?
There's advantages to the lake
Okay.
bike.
Oh, totally, and the thing is that helping people, when I eventually drop my bike,
Are you gonna be there to pick up?
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
We already
You
have.
learn the right technique, you know,
If you carry
with your
sign.
legs, you just step.
Africa Polaris Consolidated.
I'm good, how are you today, Eric?
Typing.
No,
And
in the
that now
city,
the
it's
wrist stuff with the
defensive
phones.
driving, just
Oh, the phones, yeah.
like so
Because I've
crazy.
had carpal tunnel surgery in both
Here,
hands.
but even in
Really?
the cities in California.
Photographers can get that.
Well, they don't know.
Straight
don't.
Both sides,
How are you?
it's like that. Another vehicle, the other vehicle
He
didn't
had
notice
been
the
here
motor.
for a while. He was actually very close with his repair.
Sure.
So let's
No,
go
it's
with
It
that.
was,
I know, I mean.
And let's go with, he would be in the room
Well,
and
if
he
you
would be
deal with
next
the
to
workers'
one.
comp doctor, they'll just tell you.
Because in fairness, in fairness,
Still a
Yeah.
weird
Well,
reality.
that's what
Yeah, they did.
No, I didn't know that.
I remember, but I used to have-
Yeah, I mean.
But I really want to get the
It's up to you guys, if you guys have figured it out, okay.
we
Well
always
then,
figure out.
well then, one here, one for the arrival, where are you gonna be though? Cause if somebody is, okay, so switch that spot.
Yeah, if someone will come.
Perfect. And then
Wow.
are you okay with that,
Happy
and then just rotating in after
But they also
a
have
couple minutes here?
like racers.
Okay, as long as you guys are kosher with that, that's good with me.
But is that an airbag
So,
compulsion?
so we're gonna do this, this is the 7 here, and she's just gonna
That's
do this side.
interesting.
So we have her
Wow.
normal,
I didn't know that.
2, 3, 4 on either side of the stage, down in front of the TV
Yeah,
camera,
I mean,
someone's 30.
and they also
So I just wanna know.
they also have a version for.
On the far side,
And
okay,
the stage
thank
as
you.
well.
Right. That was a long time
Sorry,
ago.
not the
Yeah,
stage,
yeah,
I
yeah.
meant as I'm pointing to the record, sorry. Oh.
Sure.
Oh, no, you'll be very happy to see that walk by an old man.
Better than
You're
road
getting
rash.
around.
It was just a clockwise, it's
I didn't know
this
that.
right.
Better than leaving your
Because you
skin
just
on
kind
the.
of bump to the side, and then you
asphalt.
bump
If you
to the
broke
back.
bones,
And
you
if you
over
broke
it, you
your
get
bones.
skull
The
fractures
riser,
or
then you bump
whatever.
to the down in front of the riser, then down in front you go to the corner, and like,
But still, it's just another safety.
It was like, someone go here and
But,
then
I've seen videos
go golf course. So if everyone's good with it,
Oh, that's great. That's a great, yeah,
you
that's
guys
a
are,
great
if you're
image.
winter
Yeah, wow, I have to Google that,
I'm
see
not
what
gonna be able
videos.
to.
Oh, yeah.
I gotta see how what that
And
looks
you
like.
have the jacket?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Everyone else is the jacket version.
Now, how heavy is that?
I don't know how much.
Light?
As long as, everyone else is comfortable, we're working together about it, obviously, so.
Metal stuff.
Here's like a conductor.
I mean, I try to read you all and them and you, so.
It looks like a flex capacitor.
Yeah.
So we can make it,
They're trying to, they have no clue what it is.
Yeah, you don't have to really, but it's basically just a CO2.
yes, that's the plan.
Where is
So then it just
Raven?
like
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
pulls
the
the
concept.
entire.
I definitely gotta find
We'll
the
try to
videos
be
of that
over
thing.
there as well to
Oh,
help
yeah, it's
conduct
awesome.
you all,
Awesome.
shall we say.
Because they have like stunt drivers fly off the
I
plane.
would think so,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I'll leave that to the stuff.
We haven't had to limit that yet, but we do need to be
Friend of mine
space
just
mindful.
Up next, fire the Supreme Court.
Awfully scared.
Trump will try it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So, well, we just don't wanna be
John Roberts.
pointed the finger at. Oh, if anyone wants your
Yeah, I had
pen
the
and pad,
little Honda Mega
the Daily Press
750
Gallery
drilled out the baffles,
at 11
just to
o'clock.
make it sound like a Harley. Of
Send
course, that
it
screws up the
Pelosi
timing
will
and
just be
everything,
starting
but
to speak then.
Yeah.
it
so-
sounded
That's a
great.
certain amount of back
Just
pressure
FYI.
Right,
in the
it
whole-
sounded great. It was a fun ride.
My dad had a Honda Hawk back in 1980.
Did that have the radiator in front as well?
Yes, we're, I mean,
That is just so amazing to me.
I would,
There were a
as
lot
a
of,
kid, I would.
Oh.
and they all like had like a.
Right, exactly.
Are they protesting the Supreme Court now?
Vegas in like 25.
Check that out.
It was really wide though, like.
Oh, and just so you heard, Daily Press Gallery at 11 o'clock with Senator Durbin.
That's
A pen and
great.
pad.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, but
If you want it.
I thought.
Cannot
This
believe
was
that
the-
somebody did not call me.
I would not compete if you're not
So
allowed.
what were you?
No, no, I'm sorry, I should.
11 o'clock, Daily Press Gallery,
Right.
pen and pad with Senator Durbin,
It's,
if you want.
3:15 across the hall.
Correct.
Yeah, I did that many.
We really
If you want, just let me,
And
just let me.
he always had the window down, and he
It was like a very big.
if somebody.
I know.
There's like a rainbow back
If
there.
we hit somebody, he'd go flying.
I know.
Culmination of the
When's
week.
he gonna file?
We start.
So there's a bunch of people out by the Supreme Court or just
Like Monday?
Yeah, there were like a bunch of.
signs and all that?
Yeah, like a space and then there were
You guys want to just,
Media to.
do me a favor, just space out from
Right.
colleagues as well, okay?
He files it.
Yeah, you can go to the beach,
You
you
just kind of like sit in the middle,
Right.
all the distancers.
going down
I
the
was,
freeway.
yeah.
So-
Yeah, can we like wear a mask?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
no.
we put on even.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no, I thought.
His hair was
no,
getting
that-
so long, I got him a headband, because I thought he'd think that was
I
funny.
was a little
And he
surprised.
didn't want to wear the headband, he was like wearing hats. I did eventually, I don't have a picture of it yet, but, a couple nights ago I took photos to it, and
Could he have?
I'll brag a little bit, I was, it turned out not good, well,
You have a lot of hair?
he had so much,
He was like,
I just cut Johnny's hair.
yeah, did you use clippers or?
reminder about it.
No, he's got his very long hair, but
Oh,
it's
right.
starting to look a little
Like
ratty.
till Monday?
Yeah.
So
They're part of the
I
protest.
This far away.
I didn't put the scissors on it. He was actually.
You know, there's signs.
Oh, turned out so good.
I understand that
He
you
has
probably.
curly hair, so you can wear one on those straight.
That's not a very good picture, but
There's
that's
one here.
like before it got cut, yeah. It was gorgeous, right, exactly, we didn't wanna cut it, but it was, this is even a couple weeks ago, so, or a week ago, so it was even longer in his eyes.
But,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Johnny's hair was so long.
They have no filter.
And back, I mean, it came down.
And then they met one of our colleagues.
Yeah.
And then we're walking away.
Yep,
But it was mostly the bangs that were.
What-
Walking into the green.
Fabulous, thank you.
that's what I was most worried about,
11
but
o'clock.
I just did that thing where you bring it up between your fingers.
Yeah, so let's get our
I used to
positions.
clippers all the way around,
You can if
and then
you
when I
want,
got here, I was like,
whatever you
alright,
choose
we
to
better
do.
just bite the bullet, and so I did that thing where you bring it up through your fingers so you can keep it about the same height.
Morning, everyone.
no,
And
Thank you.
Chairman has a pen.
Luckily it worked.
At 11,
At 11, okay.
and she's in the green room.
So, I'm gonna try really.
Get your question
Yeah.
right. Get your question.
Oh, yeah, that would not be ideal.
Hey, Pelosi now.
I'm not gonna say her name.
Good morning, and a good morning it is. The Supreme Court decision upholding President Obama's wonderful action to support our dreamers. The DACA decision is something that supports our values as a country. The dreamers across the country enjoy more popularity than almost anyone. Overwhelmingly, it's something like 75, 80% of the American people, 3/4 of the people who vote support the Dreamers. 3/4, a large number of Republicans, independents, people who, over 60% of people who support President Trump support the Dreamers. So this is really, we were just in such dread about what could possibly happen at the court up until last night, just if it goes this way, if it goes that way. But this way is the American way, and we're very proud of it. So that was this morning. Last night, in the Judiciary Committee, late last night, the committee overwhelmingly passed out the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which will now go to rules and then come to the floor before the 4th of July. We're very proud of the work that was done by Chairwoman Karen Bass, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, but also the chair of the Crime Subcommittee of the Judiciary Committee. This morning, the Supreme Court and DACA. Last night, the Judiciary Committee and the Justice in Policing Act. Tomorrow is Juneteenth, a day that we observe as a day of freedom in our country. It was the day that people in the West found out about the Emancipation Proclamation. In observance of that, I have sent a letter, which you will see, to the clerk of the House, directing the clerk to remove the portraits of 4 previous Speakers of the House who served in the Confederacy. We didn't know about this until we were taking inventory of the statues, and the curator told us that there were 4 paintings of speakers in the capital of the United States, 4 speakers who had served in the Confederacy. So tomorrow, June 10th, the clerk will oversee the removal of those Confederate speakers from the House. As I've said before, there's no room in the hallowed halls of this democracy, this temple of democracy, to memorialize people who embody violent bigotry and grotesque racism of the Confederacy. You have to see the remarks that they had made, how oblivious they were to what our founders had in mind in our country. We must lead by example, so we're glad that that is gone. I'll take some questions in a moment about the Justice in Policing Act, but we are very proud of the legislation that was put together. It was the work of decades. These bills have been in the hopper for a while, but in terms of the public sentiment to get the job done in a strong way, the moment is now. As we take action on the injustice in policing, we also have to recognize other injustice in our country, whether it's injustice in healthcare, in the economy, in environmental injustice that exists. The list goes on. And one manifestation of it right now is the coronavirus impact, having a disparate impact on people of color in our country. And so we're hoping and pushing and advocating for the passage of the HEROES Act to open our economy, testing, tracing, treating, isolating, get the job done. We don't have a vaccine and we don't have a cure. Hopefully we will, and that science will be the answer to our prayers in that regard. But we do have testing, tracing, treatment, and we want to address that in a way that takes the data, that shows the disparate impact on people of color in our country so that we can save their lives, The legislation also has an impact on our economy, and yesterday, the day before, the chairman of the Fed, Jerome Powell, urged Congress not to take our foot off the brake. I would think it would be of concern to Congress if Congress were to pull back from the support that it is providing too quickly. I do think it would be appropriate to think about continuing support for people who are newly out of work and for smaller businesses who are struggling. The economy is not just now beginning to recover. It is a critical phase, and I think the support would be well placed at this time. He's not the only one. Moody's, yesterday, the economic forecasting firm Moody's published an analysis that highlights the need for the HEROES Act. Quote, without additional help from Congress and the administration, prospects for double-digit unemployment throughout the end of next year, and even this assumes nothing else goes wrong, like a serious second wave of the virus. How well the economy does in the next several years depends critically on what lawmakers decide to do in the next few weeks. And in the next few weeks, we are hoping that, as you've seen, they went from never, we're not doing another bill, to, well, maybe, but not so big, and maybe, but not so soon. And you see they're having their own internal debate about the size and scope and timing of what happens next. But we must honor our heroes, help our state and local governments. I've told you before, speaker.gov/HEROES Act to see what it means to you in your community. Open our economy, testing, tracing, treating, and isolation, and direct payments. Has been said by economists, including Chairman Powell, that improvement that was viewed in the May employment numbers was largely because of the unemployment insurance and the direct payments. We must do that again. And of course, we want our vote by mail money in there as well. So later today, not here, but in the Rayburn Room, House Democrats will unveil H.R. 2, the Moving Forward Act, taking bold transformational action to build the infrastructure of America while again addressing key injustices, justice of transportation and transit and the rest. Sadly, the COVID-19 crisis has laid bare many vulnerabilities and disparities in our nation in terms of health care, financial security, housing, transportation, and more, which we will combat with this legislation. Democrats' plan will protect families' health, create jobs, grow the economy, invest in clean energy and climate resilience, and ensure that America's infrastructure is the envy of the world. We will bring this bill to the floor and pass it before the 4th of July. And with that, you know, the three things we said when we ran for the people, we would lower the cost of prescription drugs, lower the cost of health care by lowering the cost of prescription drugs and preserving the pre-existing condition. That bill, once again, will be on the floor on June 29th, the Affordable Care Enhancement Act. The next day, and maybe it'll take 2 days, we'll vote on lower health care costs, bigger paychecks by building the infrastructure of America. That will be the next 2 days. And before then, making our government better with the Justice and Policing Act, which will be the end of next week. That, any questions? Yes, sir?
Madam Speaker, on the police reform bill, I know this is getting a little bit ahead of things, but I know you're very proud of your bill. The Senate Republicans introduced theirs. Can you imagine, would you support ending up in conference on this? I mean, there's a limited amount you can do to affect what the Senate's going to do, but if you can move things in parallel.
Well, we'd like to end up in conference because that's how Congress works its will. The House acts, the Senate acts, and you go to conference and try to reconcile the legislation. It's so important. The American people care so much. They know so much. They are watching. And this is an opportunity that we have never had before, as you can see, taking all kinds of shape in terms of setting the record straight as to who we are as a country and how we treat people. And so, again, my negotiators are led by Karen Bass and Jerry Nadler, the chair of the Judiciary Committee, and I'm very proud of the work that they have done. It's very different in terms of what it does than the Senate bill. But at least they have similar categories.
Well, to that end, in your conversations with Leader Schumer, are you encouraging him to let that Senate bill move forward to ultimately get to that point?
One of the things you should know about our interaction is they don't tell me what to do, and I don't tell them what to do. That's up to the Senate to make their own decision about how they go forward. But we do have a bill that is introduced in the House and in the Senate. We're very proud of the work also of Senator Booker and Senator Harris and how they contributed to what this bill is, and we'll leave it up to them to make their judgment about how to proceed in the Senate. Yes, sir. Good morning.
On the DACA ruling, in mid-November, the president indicated that if the Supreme Court ruling did not go his direction, he might be willing to make a deal. I remember I asked you a couple of years ago when we were dealing with the border wall issue if you would be willing to trade border wall money for a bona fide DACA agreement. You said no at that point.
That's right.
Do you see the possibility for any sort of, based on what the president said in November, a deal on DACA or moving some sort of immigration legislation between now and the election?
Well, we would like to pass the DREAM Act, the Dream and Promise Act, which goes well beyond DACA to many more dreamers. It goes for TPS, Temporary Protected Status, DED, a deferred enforcement kind of provision. So we would like to see that bill pass. What we'd really like, though, is to come together to talk about the comprehensive immigration reform that goes even well beyond the legislation I just talked about. But there isn't anybody in the immigration community that wants us to trade a wall for immigration.
Well, what about just doing, is that back on the table now where you could see the House maybe passing an immigration bill now before, say, the election?
Well, we did pass a bill. It's called the DREAM Act.
No, but I mean comprehensive.
we'll see. I mean, there had been times when the president has said that he would support a bipartisan, comprehensive immigration reform right there on TV in the White House with Democratic and Republican members of Congress and the House and Senate there, and then reneged on it. So we'll see. I mean, it would be great if we could do that. It's what we really need to do for our country. There was bipartisan support in the Senate for such a bill, which the House Republicans would not allow to be brought up in the House. So it isn't as if we haven't found our common ground. We can, but there isn't that much time. 138 days? 130 days. Well, let's hope for the best and always try to find that. But I don't know what the president meant. Maybe he doesn't either, because he's backed off what he said before. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Speaker, obviously there are stunning allegations in John Bolton's new book. I'm curious, do you want to see him testify in the House, and would you be willing to subpoena him if necessary?
Well, it's interesting because he was so arrogant in terms of the House when we were engaged in the impeachment. We did impeach the President of the United States. Removing him from office requires a vote of the Senate, and they have said that many of them have said there's nothing that John Bolton has put forth that would change their mind about removing the President from office, because no matter how unfit the President is, they just did not want a Democratic president. President Trump, by dint of what we saw in the impeachment, by what others are being quoted as saying in terms of leaders in the president's own administration, President Trump is clearly ethically unfit and intellectually unprepared to be the president of the United States. That doesn't seem to matter to the Republicans in the United States Senate. It didn't seem to matter to John Bolton. He chose royalty over patriotism, and so he's going to make money off of his book, I guess. And so we'll make a judgment. I'll be meeting with the chairs to make a judgment, because it's not necessarily about whether we subpoena or what. We did subpoena some of his employees, and they very courageously testified. Some of the people who worked with him very courageously testified, as Mr. Schiff's statement. Mr. Schiff put out a very strong statement. I call it to your attention. Elliot Engel, the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, put out a very strong statement on this, and we'll be discussing how the American people are best served by oversight. The public has a right to know. As you know, we're waiting for the court to decide, maybe by the end of this month, as to whether they will support what our founders had in mind, the separation of powers, 3 separate co-equal branches of government, each a check and balance on the other. That is what is at stake and is before the Supreme Court now when it comes to subpoenas being respected by the executive branch. So we'll take a review. One thing is for sure, the American people have a right to know. Our oversight will always continue, whether that's by subpoena or some other way. I'll discuss that with the chairs of the committees.
Given what you've seen in the book, though, do you have...
I haven't seen the book. I'm not paying any money for a book. I don't want to pay any money for a book that was a substitute for testifying before Congress about the well-being of the American people.
Do you have any regrets about not forcing this?
No, I have no regrets. No, I'm very proud of what we did. Decisions were made. So for somebody who's trying to keep the con going with the right wing of the Republican Party by criticizing us for not subpoenaing him when he said he wouldn't come in, he'd only go to the Senate, where he knew the Senate would not subpoena him. So this is called a con, and we are very proud of what we have done. And it's really a sad thing, because he knew that the president should be removed from office. That's clear. He does want to keep his ties to the right wing, so he does that by criticizing us. I place no value on that. I repeat, President Trump, it's clear, the evidence is clear, it always has been. President Trump is ethically unfit and intellectually unprepared to be President of the United States. Yes, sir.
Madam Speaker, related a little bit to what Chad had asked you about these sort of big moments that Congress has faced before, whether it be immigration or gun violence or deficit reduction, we have seen these moments where it seems like there's a lot of buy-in for a common cause, only for it to fall apart at the end. And I'm curious your level of confidence on police reform, given that this appears to be one of those moments.
Well, you know, we go back to Abraham Lincoln. Public sentiment is everything. With it, you can accomplish almost anything. Without it, practically nothing. Now, you've heard me say that before, again and again and again. And it is a fact. And public sentiment, well, for public sentiment to weigh in, the public has to know. And that is sometimes the challenge. Do people really know what the choice is here? They do. They do. They have made it clear, beautifully, patriotically, peacefully. And for the Congress of the United States to ignore that call for justice would be wrong. So I have confidence that something will happen now, because it must, because the people insist. And they're not going to stop insisting until we get something done. Woman? Yes. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. A little bit louder.
It's going back to the police reform bills for a moment, and some of the reactions from law enforcement. Over in Los Angeles, there's been a reaction of apparently some officers who did not show up to work over at the MTA. Over in Atlanta, we're hearing that officers didn't report to work there. Is there concern about blue flu, essentially, happening across the country in reaction to what we're seeing up here on Capitol Hill as well as locally?
I think that the men and women in blue, whether that's firefighters, they're in blue too, I think, but our men and women in blue, there are enough of them there to keep the American people safe, who care about doing their jobs in a way that honors justice. And we've had communication with the Fraternal Order of Police. I've connected them with Karen Bass so that she could hear some of their concerns. And we think that there's a place for us to come together. We do know that there are some people who, as we've seen their actions, that are not, I don't think everybody who wears blue would be proud of those actions. But I do think there are many people in blue whose actions we are proud of, and I think there are enough of them to keep the American people safe. Any more women? Any more women? No more women? Yes, ma'am.
Last question.
Well, we can have one more. Okay.
Have you spoken to the administration at all about negotiating on the HEROES Act, and are you open to pulling out elements of the HEROES Act and putting it on the floor as smaller bills to address the pandemic and the need for relief?
Well, what would they want to do? If we take out the state and local government money, which is absolutely essential, by the end of June, many states and localities have to have their budgets balanced. But the Grim Reaper says he doesn't seem to care about that. Really? Really? You don't care about the fact that state and local governments who meet the needs of people need to have their budgets balanced. And this is money that is needed for them to pay for the cost of the coronavirus to them. Their outlays of money to meet the needs and the loss of revenue. Meet the needs, loss of revenue on the coronavirus. Testing, testing, testing. Are they willing to help the states to test in a way that fights this virus, defeats this virus? Why would we divide those two? Because they are directly connected. And what piece would they want? Would they want to do, they say they don't want to do unemployment insurance. This is the 13th week that we've had over 1 million people applying for unemployment. 13th straight week, over 1 million. So what piece would you subtract? This is a very disciplined, focused, necessary piece of legislation. Honor our heroes, support state and local, open our economy, testing, tracing, treatment, money in the pockets of the American people. I think they're all very connected and should go forward together. I haven't seen any initiative on their part. I haven't seen them say we should help state and local. A few of them in the Senate have. I haven't seen anybody in the House say that. I haven't seen any of them say we really need to test so that we can address this comprehensively, addressing the disparity in all this. And I have heard some of them say they don't want to do any more unemployment insurance. Unemployment, all the three things I just mentioned, they are all stimulus to the economy. They're all stimulus to the economy. Because I have to say it all the time. The one piece, state and local government, speaker.gov/Heroes Act, go look it up, is cost half of what the Republicans did in their tax scam, which gave 83% of the benefits to the top 1%, did not provide any stimulus to the economy, and heaped $2 trillion of debt onto our children. So for half of what they were willing to do for the high end, want to do for the whole country, and at the same time honor our heroes. Yes, sir.
Madam Speaker, I wonder if you said you don't like the Republican bill, but you at least the categories seem the same on the policing reform, or you indicated that. I wonder if you see more urgency here on police reform than you saw on, kind of the gun question or any number of other bills that the Senate has not taken up. I mean, at least you're both working on the same topic. I wonder if that's notable to you at all.
Well, the gun issue is very important. Yesterday was the 5-year anniversary, as you know, of the that terrible shooting, where that young man went in there, prayed with people, and then shot them dead. So we've been carrying that around for that long time, but memorializing it again yesterday. So the gun issue is a very important issue, and it's one that is very background check legislation, including Mr. Clyburn's South Carolina fix, is important to us, and like 80% of the American people support that, including gun owners who have to have background checks, and they do comply with that and support that legislation. We haven't seen tens of thousands of people in the streets day in and day out over a long period of time. A message that spread throughout the world about justice. So that demonstration in the streets was about this issue, about police brutality, but also about fairness, just fairness across the board. And when you're talking about brutality and you're talking about safety, you're talking about guns too. So that continues to be a very important issue for us. But you would have to admit, and it's quite obvious to all of us, that we have not ever seen anything quite like the peaceful demonstrations that are out there, awakened by the visible strangulation, lynching, chokehold of George Floyd, and the reaction that people had to it. It wasn't the first time it happened many times before, but it just somehow or other was the tipping point. I'll just close by saying what I've said to you before. And we had Brian Stevenson, we talked to him about, he has the lynching museum in Alabama, where many of us were just there in March. And when you go to, he has two museums, one's like a monument and the other one's a museum. When you go to the museum, it's about slavery and this or that. And I bring it up again because as a mom, it just impressed me so. I had my grandson with me when we saw this. There are two little children on the wall. They're slaves. And they speak. And they say, Mama, Mama. They're little children. Mama, Mama, has anyone seen our mother? Does anyone know where our mother is? And of course, you know the mother has been separated from the children and the brutality of all of that. And then to hear George Floyd call out for his mother. Just a universal call. The humanity of it all. I think it just struck such a chord for many reasons. Not just the mama part, but the part of 8 minutes and 46 seconds where somebody pled a number of times, I can't breathe. The inhumanity of it all, I think, has taken us to a place where we will have justice. We will have a bill. I hope it is sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Is there going to be baseball? Is there going to be baseball?
I hope so.
Have you spoken with any of the league commissioners?
No, I haven't.
Will you? Thank you.
I don't know that they're gonna get a product.